I wonder how the situation is now. Do you think critics still use the word respectability, or a dance writer? Ranjana, do you use the word?
No, I've never used the word, but I'm not sure. And nowadays, I think in a certain way, like talking about the Devadasis and talking about courtesans has become fashionable. So no critic will be caught dead saying something like calling someone from a Devadasi background not respectable. But at the same time, you hear. I remember watching a Kathak dancer in Delhi, and then someone, a dancer I know, a very senior dancer, said, "Oh, she can dance like that. She was really good with her shringar. She can dance like that because she comes from that kind of background." And so that sort of euphemistic reference is still around, but no one commits it to paper or words, and no one will say openly, come out and record it as a statement.
Yeah. But I think that dancers who were senior to me, they had to constantly deal with this criticism. Like Damayanti Joshi once told me that she never does abhinayam sitting down. She did Kathak, so Bait ke ambavne karte, because only the wives did it. So she never did that. She used to stand and do. She said that I'm not the wife, so I had to sit down and do. But I remember when we had the workshop with Damayanti, there were some other dancers, Kathak dancers also who had come, and Damayanti's mother had acted in some films, which of course Damayanti did not mention, but we had done some research and found out. And so this other dancer came and told me, what made you call Damayanti Joshi for this workshop? I said, well, she's a senior dancer. So she said that, wife just dance karte hai. So I said, what do you mean by that? So she said that her mother used to act in films. So I feel that even when they did not belong to that professional dancing community, they had to constantly deal with this criticism. That's why that word was used. But this opposite, where we romanticize courtesans and devdasis, is also not seeing them in their own context, I feel, Because
I would like to add one thing here, because these questions came a lot while learning Vilasini, and I used to get very angry with all this because overnight an entire set of women is thrown out of their profession, and they are said that you are not respectable. Okay, I used to ask my teacher, fine, what about the priests? What about those people who attended their performances? What about the writers who wrote for them? What about the kings for whom they danced? What about the public who watched all this? Why is she only being held responsible for whatever happened to the Devadasi system? If the entire system has to be questioned, what about the other players? Point one. Point two, about respectability. I've seen many, sorry to use this word, women from Brahmin families do Sanskrit pieces, the most pristine pieces, in a very vulgar manner. So why do we only say the Devadasi pieces are, usme ye chhed-chhad ka bhavan and all that? I mean, it depends the way you carry your body. I mean, I can look very cheap while doing a Krishna Radha piece also. And I can look very divine even if I'm doing a padam, a Devadasi padam. I think it depends on the way we connect to the audience and react to that text. But just bracketing every dancer from Devadasi community as bad and holding entire system of Devadasi is wrong, and just titling that dance form as something which is vulgar was something very rude which happened to the entire community, and I feel very angry sometimes. So my teacher used to say that the only way you can give back to their artists by doing the same pieces they would like you to do in the most beautiful aesthetic manner that they used to do in. Okay, do with sincerity and don't question their art. You can make your social statements in fora like these, but it is very disappointing the way people make judgments about any tradition which women used to do. Even Tawaf, us tarah se, theek hai, then system did undergo certain stages which had to be questioned, as you all know. But the only holding the woman responsible for it is, I think, being very judgmental.
But something totally different was told by a great guru like Vandanallur Meenakshundaram Pillai. You know, Meenakshundaram Pillai taught many students who were not from the Devdasi community also. But when a lot of women from Brahmin families wanted to learn Bharatanatyam, Vandanallur Meenakshundaram Pillai said that when non-professional women take up this dance, I'm afraid that they'll make it cheap. So initially I didn't understand what he said, but I understood later, because the way Devdasi carries her body is very different from the way we carry our body. Because in most the so-called middle class families, we are taught to hide the body, not really show the body. And I think that every girl grows up with this thing that why is standing near the window? Why is standing near the door? And so it's very difficult for us to perform a padam like Tervil Varano. Tervil Varano means will he come on the road. Of course, the song is addressed to Shiva. But you see, the Devdasi has to just turn and look and say, will he come? But a woman who is not used to that kind of gesture, who is constantly being criticized for standing by the window, she will emphasize it. She will do it in a way in which she has never done in her life, you see. So that's what Meenakshundaram Pillai meant when he said that when the non-professional women take up this dance and when they do Shringar, they'll make it cheap. Because they won't know how to render it. He said they'll make it cheap. Now I understand. When I see some Bharatanatyam dances overemphasize bhav, then I understand what he meant by that, that when non-professionals take it up, they'll make it cheap, And both the styles, Odissi and Bharatanatyam, both the styles are temple dancing in any way. And
I wanted to add something here that because I think in Odissi it has been less this idea of respectability, and I mean in discussions of the dance appears slightly with less frequency, because a lot of the biggest Odissi gurus came from the theatre. So Keluchan Mahapatra worked in the theatre, Pankaj Charan Das worked in the theatre. So all of them have passed through this stage of theatre, and they have no temple connections. Pankaj Charan Das did, but the others, Deva Prasad Das, Kelushan Mahapatra, had no temple connections.
They had no temple connections. And also, their own family women did dance, isn't it? They only taught others.
Yeah, his wife actually danced. They met in the theatre. Keluchan Mahapatra and his wife Lakshmi Priya.
She danced.
She was a quite a known actress, and she was. That's where he met her actually. In the theatre, and it was only after her marriage and all that she stopped dancing. And
so she was a dancer.
Yes, she was a dancer.
Okay, that's very interesting, because the Natunas in South India, they are very different. They teach others, but their own family women will never dance. They will teach Devdasis, but they won't teach their own family women. They won't dance at all. So that's very interesting. That I didn't know about Keluchan Mahapatra's wife.
Yeah.
So she was a dancer.
She was a dancer.
It's wonderful. Purva, when you do a full-fledged Bharatanatyam program, what is your repertoire like?
It has undergone a lot of changes. Actually, I've not done an Arangetram. But the first major performance I did in Chennai did follow that pattern of Alaripu, Jatiswaram. I did Shabdam also, which was not being done that time.
Which Shabdam did?
Sarasi Jakshu.
All of us did Sarasi Jakshu.
पता नहीं वो कह रहे थे maybe nowadays it's being done less. So she wanted me to do a Shabdam. Then Varnam, Padam, Tilana, and one prayer on Devi. So, but I think sometimes depending on the audience also we need to kind of play with this whole structure and at the same time keep a structure also, not taking random pieces. It also depends on if we have taken a theme. If Krishna is the theme, then we try to do an invocation to Krishna, then a Nritta piece to Krishna, maybe a Varnam, and then something. So the repertoire that has been given to us traditionally, I find it very interesting because it starts with a simple piece like Alaripu. It's only an abstract piece, or a Pushpanjali, very simple piece to understand, and generally done to Ganesha, so everybody identifies immediately. And then the Nritta of the technique of the dance is shown, then Varnam, and then an intense engagement with ideas in terms of Padam, and then a flourish in Tilana. So emotionally also, the dancer and the audience kind of go almost together. But if we start the presentation with an intense Varnam or something which expects the audience to pay a lot of attention, I think that's a little difficult. So I don't really experiment with the Margam format. Or even if I'm doing a major piece, beginning with something which is like a Varnam, the treatment will be such that we in the beginning make it simple and then we make it more complex and then kind of end in a simple note. So that nowadays the audience come from all different cultural backgrounds, and to expect them कि उस तरह से they are in tune with us, I think it's a lot to expect as a dancer. So Margam does give a focus to both the audience. That's my perspective. So I keep within that frame. So I go with the tradition.
Since you learned in the Kalakshetra style, I don't think that they would have taught you the Telugu Javanese.
When I was learning, my mother was very keen on focusing on bhakti. I don't know why.
Bhakti was brought in by Rukmini Arundel. She changed all the Shringar into Bhakti.
No, the compositions that were taught to me, generally when we introduce a youngster to Shringara, we do teach her little pieces which are like Mugdha Naika Madri, in vain.
That I understand.
But as far as I remember, I only did Kirtanams and Bhakti Padams. So my introduction to Shringaram was very late. So that's why I did only 1 or 2 Padams.
What about Tamil Padams? Did you do Tamil Padams?
Tamil Padams also I used to take mostly Ambujam Krishna, Papanasham Shivan Kritis.
Those were Bhakti. Those were basically
So
Bhakti.
in fact, at the first Padam I learned was this thing of Kshetraya with Priya Govind. It's a very popular Sahana Padam. Magruchi Pilacheru. And it was a little tough for me to understand because it talks about child marriage and how this girl was married to, that pact was made, but she grew in a relationship with Krishna. And then when she, and then her husband comes to call her. And then she says, I'm going away, but I'll always be with you, kind of a storyline. It was so difficult for me to understand this whole thing. And the language also added to the difficulty. But I think now, looking back in retrospect, we do go through these emotions, and language can be a barrier, but whenever I take a text, even Swapna Akka or Radhika Akka, they give a lot of detailing in understanding literature. So I've never really felt that I didn't have that language background with me. I didn't feel that not knowing Telugu was a major disadvantage because the piece, the way it was understood and deconstructed layer by layer happened very beautifully with both my teachers. So the padams that I learned in Bharatanatyam were very few. My actual engagement in Abhinaya happened with Swapna Akka.
With Swapna.
The Shringaram part of it. Otherwise, I used to only do Kritis and
What is an Odissi repertoire like? What does it start with?
It usually starts with a Mangalacharan, which is an invocation.
Yeah.
And the invocation, there's a part that's is dedicated to Jagannath, and then there is a part where you can insert anything. It could be an invocation to a goddess or Ganesha or to anyone, to a human figure. Like I've seen Mangalacharans that based on Vivekanand or.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it's just a shloka, so you can insert anything there. And then there's a part that acknowledges the audience and that ends with a pranam to the divine, to the teacher, and to the audience.
Does it have something like the Tilana that we have in Bharatanatyam, a fast number?
It actually does, but in Odissi it's called the Pallavi.
It's called the Pallavi.
And the place of the Pallavi is very different. So the Tilana is
It's
usually
the end,
the end, but in Odissi, a Pallavi usually comes right after the invocation.
Oh, really? Right
So-
in the beginning then?
Yeah.
Okay. What the illustration we showed of you, that was
is
a
a Pallavi.
Pallavi, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because it didn't have any words apart from
Yes.
jatis.
And the difference is, even like from what I know, most Tilanas have a small sahityam somewhere, Pallavis don't.
Okay.
So at the most they have one to the raga. There are a couple of Pallavis. There's a Vasant Pallavi where there's a shloka about Vasant before you begin.
The season was
Yes, but usually they're just syllables and not any sort of.
have you also learned Gita Govindam?
Yes, so few
Which is
pieces.
one have you learned?
I've learned Lalita Lavanga and Hira Samire and.
And there is everybody has to learn. That's nice. And when they do Gita Govindam, is it at the end? Because I've seen Sanjukta doing it towards the end of a performance. Different Gita Govindam she used to do.
It actually depends on the length of the performance also. But vaguely the structure is a Mangalacharan, a Pallavi, and then a very ambiguous Abhinaya portion, which could be anything. It could be Gita Govindam, it could be an
it could be
Abhinaya,
anything.
or an Oriya Abhinaya, it could be... and sometimes there's also Stuti, there's... Someone might do Ardhanarishwara or a Devi Stuti there. And so it could be anything. There's no... there's nothing that specifies people have to do one of each.
What is the finale? What is the end of the
The
repertoire?
end is this piece called Moksha.
Moksha.
Yeah. So which is what it is. It's just supposed to be
So
Moksha.
have you done an entire repertoire, Ranjana?
I have.
You
a
have
few
done.
times.
The entire repertoire.
Yes. So what I usually do is Mangalacharan, a Pallavi, a Gita Govindam song, then an Oriya Abhinay and a Moksha.
In terms of structure, Purva, I find Bharatanatyam is very angular, It is symmetrical. And then if you do your hand here, then you have to certainly do here, and then 4 corners. And I find that sometimes very restrictive in terms of body movement. Whereas I find Odissi is like the flow of a river, And it'll be nice if you could just show me one Bharatanatyam movement, and Ranjana could show me some Odissi movements.
So as you said, the angularity of Bharatanatyam is very well defined, and that goes in the stance, which is Aramandi, half Mandi, and the Hastakshetra is very expansive, and the lines are very defined.
Defined, yeah.
So there is no movement of upper torso as you see in Odissi. So that way there's a lot of fluidity in what you do. Yeah. Like in Bharatanatyam it will be tai yum, ta tai yum, ta. So it will be very, I won't say rigid, but the way we kind of distribute movement to second is very definite. Whereas it's different in Vilasini. I'll come to that later.
Purva, when you did this one, Vilasini, there was that flow. That's there. The torso movement is there for Vilasini.
Yeah.
Ranjana, can you do...
Yeah, so there is a sort of very similar movement in Odissi. The basic position, we have our hands out at 90 degrees, not this, and there's this. So I think you did this. So we take the body away from here. You keep
Yeah,
the shoulder
in
at the
Vilasini
same
it's
place.
this.
Yeah. So just this.
There is definitely a difference because in Odissi the body moves away from the line, you know.
Yeah.
Whereas Bharatanatyam they stick to the line.
Ji, ji. And which is why I find Bharatanatyam more strenuous also.
Yeah.
Because in the same time gap, we have to cover more area. And the shift has to be very quick. Whereas in Vilasini or Odissi, it's more of like drawing an arch. But in Bharatanatyam, it's like drawing a line, tap karke, point to point.
Vilasini is smoother in terms of execution.
So same thing will be this. It won't be either.
Yeah.
So even the feet move, the area I'm covering with my foot is far. It's more than what I do in Vilasini. So the area covered during a performance in Vilasini is also lesser. I think
lesser.
We are now, because adapting to different sizes of stage, so we are also making the movements a lot more expansive. But when we see those Devadasis, I've had the privilege of seeing some videos. It's very limited because they used to dance in a limited area.
Yeah, the temple space was limited. And when you did the Vilasini Natyam movements, you don't follow the Aramandi position in that?
We have Aramandi. This is, while the Sthanaka is this, as compared to Bharatanatyam is this. Vilasini, it's this. So even the way I'm holding my hands, it's lot more feminine than this. And but Aramandi is proper. Bharatanatyam Aramandi, but hand is like Odissi. Natya Ramam is only this much.
You don't stretch it.
We don't stretch it. So the Hastakshetra is only this much. All my movements will be restricted to this area.
And how do your hands move when it goes up and in Odissi, Ranjana?
Usually never straight. So whatever we're doing is you go up this way or you this way.
And also your legs are far away in your Odissi.
So this is actually one of the biggest changes over the years because the older teachers do a very big choker. Whereas, and then it's become narrower with time. And one of the explanations Jhilantai gave me, which made a lot of sense, was that people were training far more rigorously in the older times, and when you spread your feet far apart, you're shifting your weight constantly. And if you are trained enough to manage that, that's okay. But a lot of people who were learning for very short periods or not spending enough time learning started doing this, and that is why the teacher started bringing the chakra closer, and so that it was at a manageable distance. So that's and now in fact a lot of people in Orissa do this. They call it Vimukha Pada, and everything else is the same, but they try to keep the feet as close as possible, which I don't know, I can't agree. I don't really agree with that.
You still follow the Jhilam style, isn't it?
Yeah, I've tried to find a distance that is comfortable for me. So what I do is a little wider than what Jhilantai would do, but
it's wider than
a little wider.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. There's one more thing. Now you can sit down.
I was just thinking if I could show more adavus from Bharatanatyam and Vilasini and Odissi, I can show how Vilasini, how the tradition of Vilasini, of those Kalavatis, had similarities because we are standing, so I just thought I'll take this time to,
you must.
Vilasini, that time, all of you know, the states were not divided as Andhra Pradesh and Kerala and Tamil Nadu. So those Kalavatis had a lot of exchange with Outer Desha, with those Devadasis up there, and also Devadasis towards Kerala and Tamil Nadu. So the northern style that I do looks a lot more like Odissi. So my Sthanakam is this. There's this movement which is very similar to
Yeah.
Odissi. The way we hold a Ganesha is very similar to, yeah. And then we hold this Diditai is very similar to what you do. Whereas when you see this Diditai as opposed to this
Yeah.
Diditai in Bharatanatyam,
Yeah.
you can see that fluidity and this angularity. In southern style of Vilasini, there's something called Diditai, which looks similar to this Diditai in Bharatanatyam. So it's very interesting to know how this language of Kalavati is kind of exchanged. And one more thing, in Vilasini we have something like this. So people thought we have taken something from Mohiniyattam also. We have a piece called Pallavi, which we do in Balabhogam, in which there's a movement like this, which ends like this. So then I was asked, isn't this like Mohiniyattam? So people thought that we have conjured up a little bit of Bharatanatyam, little bit of Odissi. No, it was not like that. It just happened that these ladies who were far removed from dance for almost 4 decades, had they talked during the same era like Mohiniyattam, Odissi, Bharatanatyam, then people would have understood how these Kalavatis had a cultural exchange and how dance languages were formed. But since the dialogue got cut, now Vilasini has come up, so everybody's like wondering what is this dance style. But there's a lot of similarity, and it's interesting to know the cultural history through dance of this southern region. Yeah.
And actually, a lot of the Devadasis, at least the initial ones, came from Andhra Pradesh. So and the state borders of Odisha were only formed in 1936. So I think there's a lot that, and now in this whole narrative of like Odissi needing to be Odia, a lot of that cultural exchange is being lost. But with like you said, there's this in Odissi, so we do this.
We have
it's almost the same.
It's almost the same. Yeah, it goes like this, and we do this in Pallav.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's something like this also. So
you can't dream of it in Bharatanatyam.
So, and I happened to see a Gotipo performance, and they held their Ganesha like this. I was jumping on myself, and this is how we do it in Vilasini. So I was glad to see that so many similarities are still there, and people should see that as a statement of cultural history and not as something which is dividing states and this is your style, this is my style, which is why many times for Vilasini there has been a criticism from Andhra, especially from Kuchipudi people. What is this dance style and all that? But okay, if they take it as another language of their people, I think acceptance will be more.
Maybe there was a cultural exchange which has been lost, which we have not understood. This Vilasini Natyam proves that, you know. That maybe like the moments that she has in Odissi, Vilasini Natyam also has.
And Swapna Akka is trying to, along with demonstrating all these things, trying to tell people with the help of cultural history, those books that were written during the period, dialogues with Devadasis that she had, also people like Dr. Arutra and how Nataraja Ramakrishna did their research, and research of Andhra as such. So right from like almost 500,000 years back, she's trying to trace the cultural history and trying to tell people the link which was lost. So people who also ask her questions need to go back and kind of see that how the history was written, who was writing the history, where was the link lost, is the history complete, as in is that period properly represented in our history or not. So when somebody is trying to speak on behalf of those Devadasis who could not really articulate their stories, there should be an acceptance. I'm sure with time it will come.